One thing that I cannot do at home in Canada is science fiction, and I'm dreaming to do science fiction since I'm 10 years old. You know, it's like a genre that I feel has a lot of power and a lot of tools to explore our reality in a very dynamic way.
Class is dismissed.
When I'm writing, I am not thinking in terms of a movie at all. And this story in particular is not a story that I would ever have imagined being adapted into a movie. A lot of it is very interior.
For years, I had been saying we need to make a movie out of this and tried to get other producers invested in it to read it. Intellectual science fiction is tough for a lot of people because there's a lot of material that producers have to read in any given week, and to give them something that has a bit of a steep learning curve and doesn't necessarily show up with a marketable idea or a commercial idea right out the gate, it's hard to get a lot of them to engage.
Gavesty. He says it means an argument. What do you say it means?
A desire for more cows.
Pack your bags.
And then I had a general meeting with Dan Levine and Dan Cohen. Dan Levine said, well, is there any material out there that you'd like to adapt? Is there any story that, maybe we could look at? So many producers had sort of passed it by, but I said, well, Story of Your Life by Ted Chiang. I would love to see this as a movie. And they were the first to actually call me back and say, we read it, we love it, we're doing this.
Ted is like, well, how will I know it will be a good movie? And I said, honestly, well, you don't. We'll do our best to make it good. I've worked on great movies and not so great movies, and we will do our best. But if anyone is going to promise you it'll be great, they're not telling you the truth.
They told me that they had a director that they'd like to use for the film, and they sent me a DVD of a film called Incendies, which was Denis Villeneuve's film. And their choice of that film as an example to send me of what they had in mind, that impressed me a lot. If they had sent me a disc of a conventional Hollywood science fiction film, I probably would not have taken them seriously.
Denis is beautifully talented, and the chance to work with Denis in a genre that he hasn't worked in before is that's a chance you don't get, and so we went for it.
His movies have such pace and tension, yet they're just incredible character pieces underneath, and that's what this requires. I looked at him as an artist. I mean, I have not seen a bad film from him yet. They've been great. Every single time I see a film of his, it's the greatest experience.
He's reluctant to jump onto anything right away. He has to sort of sidle up, and you have to be very careful as you approach him, and then set down a little bit of screenplay candy and this hope that he kind of comes back to you.
They introduced me to that short story of your life. I fell in love with the short story because it was exploring language in a beautiful, poetic, powerful way. And I said to them, it's fantastic material.
What does it say?
Now I'm shooting a movie, Prisoners. I have no time to write a screenplay, and to be honest with you guys, I don't know how to crack that short story.
Offer weapon.
Because it's very intellectual, in a strong way, beautiful way, but from a dramatical point of view, it's a bit difficult to articulate, because it's about process. I went away, and he came back later with a screenplay written by Eric Eiserer.
And Eric was a tireless champion of this project, and we worked on it until it became what it is today, or close to it, because Denis helped a lot in the later stages. But when Denis finished Prisoners, we sent him the script, and he's like, my God, you guys did it.
Eric was able to crack and to create a kind of a sense of tension and drama inside that process of translation.
What I tried to do best was make sure that I was giving something that was visually arresting to go along with all the other mentally arresting and emotional pieces that Ted gave me.
I wanted to write a story about the step that in a lot of science fiction stories they always skip over, about the process of learning an alien language, a language which has no basis in any human language, bears no similarity to any known human language, and for which you don't have any translator available. There's no one who's already learned your language and their language and can act as an intermediary.
It is bold. It assumes an intelligent and a willing audience to embrace a lot of sophisticated ideas. It tries to speak to them as respectfully as possible. I don't want to be the one saying, let's dumb it down. The minute we do, then we are assuming something about our audience that they can't go along for the ride.
The National Guard failed to prevent a third night of looting across the country. In North Dakota, 144 members of the St. Lawrence Pentecostal cult are feared dead.
It's a massive existential crisis for any religious people that think that we are the center of the world. We are afraid of things that are different, things that are out of our consciousness, our imagination.
There are hard sci-fi stories that translate well to film, usually when the movie is really a study of human behavior, a look, a snapshot at what's going on in our society or in our culture, in our politics, and there is a science fiction way to talk about this.
I feel that civilization is very more fragile than ever. It says things about how our communications are weaker and weaker, how paranoid we are afraid of the others we are more than ever. Even the more we have communications, the less in communication it seems we are. It says a lot about our narcissism as human beings and as societies, and how disconnected we are from one to the other.
I think that's the mark of a good sci-fi film, is that when you start to talk about what's really happening in the story, it's not a sci-fi concept. It's something that's very heartfelt, it's something very personal, or it's something very human.
I'm human. What are you?
Obviously, the focal point of the movie is Louise's character, and therefore the actress playing her. Dan Levine and I flew to Montreal one afternoon to sit down with Denis and basically have a conversation with him of who do you want to cast in this film, and walked away with Denis saying Amy Adams. She was the first choice. She was the only name we ever spoke about.
Which scared all of us because, you know, if there's only one idea and one chance, one shot he wants to make, then if we don't get that, we're in trouble. You know, we don't want to lose him.
It creates a tension, yeah.
Amy Adams, she was the actress I was dreaming of for this part because I knew we'll meet this civilization, we will meet those beings coming out from outer space through her eyes.
And it was one of the rare moments in my career and my experience on Hollywood where our first choice was a yes.
I really wanted to take a break and just be a mom for a while, and then I read the script and I said, I'll take a break after I do this movie. It was one of those that spoke to me really deeply in the core of who I am. And I felt that we had to trust in the script so much because you have to be telling a story about what's happening in the future, but you need the audience to believe that it's happening in the past. And I was really excited to attempt it, because as a character, to have to tell the story where there is no time, and usually how I work is so linear as an actress, I just base myself on what's happened, where we're going, what we're doing. To have to play all of it just seemed like the ultimate challenge for me.
Amy Adams is not only one of the best actresses alive, she's also the most lovely human beings and a trooper. She's just there to give, very easy to direct. It was just like sunshine on set all the time with Amy.
I did it because I love Amy, and also because I love the script. I thought the script was amazing, and the story, that checked that box real quick. It was a beautiful, beautiful story.
Not a lot of guys will show up and play the supporting role to a female character, and Jeremy didn't even blink, and I'm so appreciative because he's so good in this and so present.
I thought it was a phenomenal part for her, and a phenomenal part for a woman, and because the movie is told through her eyes, and it was always going to be like her movie.
How do we clarify their intentions beyond those two words?
Forrest Whitaker is a master, and I felt that Forrest was able to bring a gravitas, a wisdom, dimension to this character in a way that I was very impressed by it. So you're not listening to him, you just stay in yourself and say, okay, what do I do right now? What will be the best option? Just computing in your brain until he comes in and see the Department of Defense, because you know that the things are so very internal.
The film is really grounded in the emotions of the characters and the emotional journey of the characters, particularly obviously Amy's character as she's going through this inner change, and then it's a question of us together and the relationships between us. And I think that makes it human and not as removed as like some science fiction projects could possibly be. Not that they're bad that way, it's just very different.
Today we are talking about Portuguese and why it sounds so different from the other Romance languages. I sat down and met with a linguist, and she studies the anthropological significance of language and culture and sort of how people speak to another and how languages originate. So yeah, I did a lot of reading, and I realized I wouldn't be a good linguist.
I went through several drafts of the script and gave written feedback on that, writing little reviews for them of, this part, I'm not sure a linguist would actually say this way, or this doesn't seem exactly like how a linguist would characterize this.
These are all grade school words. Eat, walk. Help me understand.
A point that Amy Adams' character makes during the movie and has to repeat several times to the military generals who are demanding of her, give me this translation right away, is you can't start complicated, right? You have to start very simple, starting with simple words and then moving to sort of phrases before you can get into a complex question.
Yeah, fine.
Anybody who's done linguistic fieldwork knows you can't just show up in a community and get right to, answering your theoretical question about the structure of the language. You have to first sort of establish a relationship and establish a rapport with people and become sort of trusted by them. And so I think Amy Adams saying, I'm going to really interact with the heptapods in this way and not have this huge spacesuit in the way, even though these military guys are saying don't do it. I thought that was a good field worker moment.
Let's imagine we were put in this situation in real life. What would one actually do if one was in real life trying to make an analysis of what was going on, to try and add some reality to the science? It's like, okay, what code do we write? The code you see is the code that actually does what's in the movie. The code is all in this language that I've spent the last 30 years developing, Wolfram language, and sort of the idea of the language is to get it to the point where as much as possible is automated. So the human who's trying to figure stuff out has as little work to do as possible, and the most work is done by the computer that's sort of automatically doing all these computations. Since I've spent most of my life actually trying to build real things in science and technology, it's kind of a fun change to think about just what might be rather than what actually is, so to speak.
You have the obligation when you're working in a well-worn genre to be different than those before you. What are the aliens going to look like? What are the ships going to look like? It's an enormous burden to be original.
2001, Space Odyssey, started a certain style and then it evolved into Star Wars, Elysium, and all the spaceships. They all kind of look kind of similar. There's like codes that have been established, and we kind of, okay, well, Independence Day, okay, it's believable. It's got antennas and little doors and little ships. They're all kind of, and let's try to, go somewhere else.
And I came with this idea that a spaceship should have the shape of a pebble, like a little stone. It's shaped like a strange egg. That strange, perfect shape felt ominous, mysterious, frightening to me. We thought, Patrice and I, that the spaceship should be made from a matter that is not from Earth. It's not a shiny spaceship. It's not a white spaceship. It's not made of metal or plastic. It's made like a strange stone. We are not sure what it is exactly. They cannot guess. There's something about science that I feel that very often, as an artist, I feel that science is a bit arrogant, trying to explain all the time everything, saying that there's just those elements that exist in the universe, that because we found them on Earth, it means that they are define the universe. That pisses me off. I like to think that there's tons of things that we don't know yet, and that's the way I designed the spaceship, meaning that it will work with laws that defy our knowledge, like gravity, that the composition of the spaceship will be totally unknown from Earth.
Greek, hepta 7, pod, foot, 7 feet, heptapod. Who are they? Trying to answer this in any meaningful way is hampered by the fact that outside being able to see them and hear them, the heptapods leave absolutely no footprint. Are they scientists or tourists? If they're scientists, they don't seem to ask a lot of questions.
We had to create this beast, Abbott and Costello. We also had to design the look of them, the textures. We also had to develop what is their body language, the way they write, and the way they behave in this barely non-gravity environment. Then he didn't want anything that would have pushed the alien towards something more human-like.
For me, the main quality of those aliens was that I wanted them to have a huge, strong presence, like a whale, and a deep intelligence. To create the alien, I worked with an artist that I love. His name is Carlos Fuente. He had worked with Ridley Scott on Prometheus and other movies, and I just felt that through his creature there was like what I was looking for, a soul, a presence. I cannot believe that the alien is looking like that in the movie. I cannot believe that the producer, the studio, let me do that. I'm so grateful because I wanted the alien to be a creature that is surrealistic, that is coming from a world of dream, of nightmare.
I can't believe that our alien craft and aliens look literally nothing like anything we've ever seen before. That is near impossible. After, what, over 100 years of cinema history, and I think it's a formidable achievement.
Patrice had that fantastic idea. For me, I wanted the spaceship to be hovering over the Earth, maybe 30 feet above, so I said, how do they get there? And said a scissor lift. Something mundane, something very, that people can see at the store, at their corner of the street, you know. Objects of everyday life will be in contact with that new civilization, and we were trying to approach it as the most humble and human level.
And then she arrives. When she stops,
I didn't want the humans to use technology that didn't exist. I wanted them to use what is available today. The tools that we could use to go in contact and talk with aliens. And honestly, the answer of that research, it was like astonishingly shocking, because if you talk with aliens, you will use a whiteboard with a marker and say, hello.
Louise.
At the end of the day, it's like teaching to kids. And that, for me, it was a very, very striking image to see the banality of that process, being in contact with something such impressive as another civilization like that.
all right, guys, stand by.
And then there was the hazmat suit that will look real, but that will allow me to see my actor's face too. So honestly, the actual suit is accurate, is real. The only difference is that normally you will have something in your face like that, and then I will have no movie. So I had to create a shape where I could see the actor's face. That's the only concession I made for the suit. The rest is like pretty real.
Can it go back a little bit if you can?
Those hazmat suits that are super awkward, they look awful, and that's what we wanted. We did try things at one point, you know, for the hazmat, and it looked too beautiful. And Denis and I sat down and said, it's too beautiful. And it was a big choice to make, you know. Yes, we're going to go with something that is not pretty, it's difficult to work with, but we'll make it work.
René is like a very sensible artist that is interested to create characters and to bring to those characters a lot of humanity, a lot of dimension.
Pictures up, stand by. Picture.
The reality of every moment in this film, that's what we try. So I didn't go with palettes of color or nothing like that, just raw.
Victor to the Apple Baker, take 4.
I don't like green screens. I asked Patrice to build the interior of the spaceship.
Action.
And for me, that was a big gift from the production, because we were able to create the massive tunnel in the chamber. There's no visual effects there. It's all real.
Production design and cinematography, they always go hand in hand, but more deeply in this movie than most.
Cut, reset.
Because the very design of the spaceship's interior is light reliant.
Action.
Its design feature is light. And so there was a real integration of production design and photography in this movie.
The cinematographer, Bradford Young, was able to shoot with light and create effect with light that were real in that room.
When I'm in the spaceship, I feel like I'm shooting film for the first time, like it's my first time being on a movie, because it's a piece of architecture, it's a piece of reality that I've never worked in before, and so I've had to sort of suspend my own notions about what is real or what isn't real in order to just convey feeling, and exploring this idea of darkness as well. Not darkness as a frightening thing, but darkness as an unknown. throughout the film, we're working with darkness in all of the places where human beings occupy, but when we enter into the space in which aliens occupy, we're working with a level of brightness and sort of resolve that you don't see in the rest of the film.
We created an approach for the movie that we call dirty sci-fi, which means that we were trying to create the feeling that this was happening on a bad Tuesday morning, like when you're a kid in a school bus on a rainy day going to school and you dream looking at the clouds, you know, and it's rainy, and that kind of atmosphere. And Bradford brought a lot of humanity and beauty to the movie.
I think the beauty of this shot is like all the, yeah. And when she stepped back a bit too, so
it's not a problem. You probably cut on the hand.
Yeah, exactly.
The point of departure should always be feeling. If it felt right, ultimately we could be as wide as we wanted and as tight as we wanted. And I think this just added a certain level of scale and scope to it, where we could ultimately be deeply personal and deeply internal, but at the same time be massively observational and be able to step back from it all as well.
To create then the language, I had a couple of people, graphic designers, linguists, try to come up with the language that we would use, you know. I was not really satisfied with anything because it always related to something that we know.
I didn't want something that can relate to any human language, a language that is coming from another way of thinking.
Denis and I had talked about squids. You don't know if it's like a defense mechanism, if it's ink, you know, thrown at you like that. Is it like a skunk? Is it, what is it? You know, it's a big blur. It's like almost a coffee stain design. So let's make sense out of it, because she's got to interpret it. And we started creating this language that actually makes sense. It sounds weird, but it makes sense. And if you add certain elements to it, it can have like a question mark, or you can have like hesitation, or you can add modulation to that thought or that word.
Patrice created a dictionary. He created a structure, how the words are constructed. And there was I had piles of documents explaining to me the language. And that for me was the most beautiful thing, to see the level of detail and passion that Patrice brought to the project was insane.
What's great about working with Denis is he is one of the most collaborative and kind filmmakers that I've ever worked with.
When you have a director like Denis, it changed the whole mood of a set.
It's Denis Villeneuve's signature. He creates a mood for the production that puts everybody in the same, easy in the same direction. Nobody's trying to be a solo guitarist and play a guitar solo that will not fit with the rest of what the band is playing. We're all focused in the same direction.
The vibe on a set is always from the top down, and if you have a great director and a director that is brilliant yet listens and wants feedback, then you have a cast and crew that feel really comfortable.
It's interesting because the films of his that I had seen were all very dark and intense, brutal in ways. And I expected, when I sat down with him for that first session, to see someone very brooding and serious. I was expecting a very intense person that didn't smile very often, and instead I got the complete opposite of that. I got a lovely man who seemed to have just exorcised all his demons through these films.
Memory is a strange thing. It doesn't work like I thought it did.
A lot of sci-fi movies are bad, but some of them are masterpieces. And doing one sci-fi movie, I realized how insanely difficult it is to do sci-fi, to create a world, to create an inner logic, something that has not been seen before. So I must say, by doing this movie, I became just a more humble director, because I just saw how very difficult it is. So it just increased my respect for a director that made great sci-fi movies.
There's been a run of movies where aliens show up and it's to conquer our planet or to destroy us, and I love those movies. There's a great time and place for those. But I don't want a steady diet of that. I want a chance to have a movie and have a story about a strange new people that visit us, and we have to be on our best behavior.
The movie is about collaboration and the possibility of connection between cultures and countries that could unify the world. And I think that might be a fantasy, but it's a fantasy worth aspiring to.
We are so bound by time, by its order.
by being more in relationship with death, by being more in relationship from an intimate way with the nature of life. It will bring into us much more humility. And I think that humanity needs that humility right now. I think that we are at a point where we are dangerously disconnected from nature. And I think that is what this beautiful short story was for me. A way to go back in relationship with death and nature and the mystery of life.
I remember moments in the middle.
I love you. I hate you.
And this was the end. But now I'm not so sure I believe in beginnings and endings.
If an audience member embraced the journey, I think he will be deeply moved, and the movie will raise beautiful questions in his heart. Yeah.
There are days that define your story beyond your life. Like the day they arrived.
I totally approach sound as a character. For me, sound in a film is a character, is a language. So we have to really think about that character as a meaning, as a brain, as a way to say things. It's pure emotion for me.
Happy surprises, experimentation, and just trying new things all the time that you wouldn't expect. I guess my philosophy for sound design changes on a daily basis. You know, one day you think you've got everything sorted in the world, and the next day you just sort of pull it apart and sort of find something new.
Each film that you work on is somebody's vision that they've been working on for sometimes decades. The sound is on the last leg of the chain, and so there's so many people's hearts and souls that have poured into a film, and you really want to do that as much service as you can. And so you're very mindful of that every day when you're working, trying to get the spirit of a huge number of artists into the sound that you're making.
I needed someone that will approach sound with the craziness in a crazy way, and I found a crazy sound designer. One of my friends, Sylvain Bellemare, was perfect man to design the sound of Arrival. The approach of the movie is quite minimalistic. The most powerful sound is silence.
My first conversation with Denis was really into something to create a mood with the sound, and it's not only to represent the image that we see on the screen, is to try to bring another sort of music. This is what sound design is about. It's another sort of music also, another sort of rhythm. But at the same time to be very clever to not overwhelm the image, because Denis, as many directors, do not want the sound to take us away from the scene. I'm like the slave of the image. So when you come to sound, you open the door to another level of perception, and I really love it.
Alpha detail is in position. Team is in position. We're on the move.
The idea of not having artificial sound for everything surrounding the heptapods was very important. We never had any kind of electronic sound, not machines and stuff or engine sound. We wanted something completely natural sound, organic sound, I will say. There is kind of a weird wind sound surrounding the shell. It's like there is tension, but these are pure wind sound that we have just processed. They really process those winds we cannot find in natural world, but their sources are natural. And when the shells move, it's made of rock and earthquakes and ice. I think we can really feel in the film that the texture of the sound, there is something, the scale of the sound, the range of the sound is I think is really beautiful, because these are coming from real textures.
We need to be talking to each other.
You want to talk to them? Find out what this means.
Base camp talk is now offline.
Communication. There's a lot of level of communication in the film between humans and heptapods, between humans through radios, between humans through television, through Skype, through all devices that we know today. That was really something to explore. How do we explore the distance, the closeness of those devices? We really wanted to make those communications really, truly believable. Today, in sound world, we use a lot of plugins that everybody knows to create the sound that's coming from a phone, from something like that.
You don't need to worry.
They work fine, but we really wanted something original. And we decided to buy and rent real devices. So what we did basically with different devices and radio, we sent the voice of a character into the devices. The devices was sending the signal through waves to the other devices, then recorded from the speakers through a microphone instead of using plugins in your computer, because we had to redo every single lines on their radio communications. We did the same with all TVs, all computers, all Skype. It was a very long process, but the result is astonishing. It's so fascinating because you are doing the real stuff. The collaboration with Denis, for me, is always to be kind of in a mood of discovery. It's like being able to fall in love every day to something. And I think Denis has this, he's fantastic for that. He's one of the top directors now in Hollywood, and he still have this freshness in his eyes. He wants you to be able to snap to something, wow, let's try this. We'd never tried that. Why not? For instance, to play with the birds. Of course, the birds was part of the script. When they arrive to the shell, they do like miners go to the mine with a little bird to make sure to see if there's enough oxygen. And the bird is there singing. And the great idea was to bring back that bird to the nightmare scene.
I mean, I've had a few dreams, but I don't.
When the sound of the birds is coming closer, 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 and then we see that big heptapod. The bird was there as a very sensitive moment of mixing animals and real and unreal. Another thing to really explore in the film was how we're going to make the sound of the extraterrestrial, how the heptapods will sound.
We had developed the written language, but then there was the sound. And Joe Walker, my editor, thought about Dave Whitehead, that is living in New Zealand. You know, is one of the guys that has that kind of knowledge of sound waves and how he can explore and develop strange languages. And what I loved about David is that it had a deep logic, which was based on the way the aliens are designed, their body.
You see the design of the aliens and you see the physicality of the body. And so you think, okay, how is this thing going to make a noise? Okay, it's got a big resonating chamber. What if inside these aliens, two bones were together and they resonated? That was, in my mind, where the sounds were kind of coming from in the first instance, because we couldn't see a mouth.
It's something quite unique. It's physical, but it's not generated by any means that is very typical of something that lives on our planet. So I had to get a bit creative. It was a real dream opportunity because we were given the vocals for the aliens, and it's like somebody saying, I'm making a cake and I want you to do the icing. Dave is kind of in a very fortunate position, because when he worked on District 9, it kind of sent out this business card to anyone that was making an alien sci-fi, like, this guy's got some pretty cool ideas.
It's about looking at what the shape of the character is, trying to come up with your own philosophy as to how the sounds are made, and then applying it practically, and then hopefully you get the nod that it's good.
Y tus trailers, visita mi canal.
We were dealing straight with editorial and with Denis. One of the best things he said was that he wanted the aliens to sound sacred.
Very intimidating, but at the same time very intelligent and very graceful. rather than just monstrous.
And that he wanted this sacred sort of feeling to come from them. And, you know, it was really cool thinking about that because, you know, you sort of think of whether it's a choir sort of singing in a reverberant space or an organ, the way the deep notes sort of, you know, resound in a room, or even being in a forest and hearing a bird in the distance. And so we took that, those sort of notes, and applied that to the alien vocals. The direction that they gave us, I mean, that was the thing that resonated in my head the whole time, was sacred.
You don't use stock footage when you're filming a feature film or a project, and so you don't use stock sound. We try and record as much as we can fresh and original.
We like to record a lot. I mean, you've got to record new things. So Shell and I actually went into the forest all around New Zealand, around the North Island, and recorded the kokako, which is a very rare bird in New Zealand, and we hiked up a mountain 3 days. It was a big hike with gear on our back to try and find this bird, and so we got that, and we got tuis, which are really beautiful as well, native New Zealand birds, pitched down very, very low, and they are a lot of the alien vocals.
I also did a bagpipe record, which was really interesting because I had no idea how complex an instrument they are and how you can take them apart and use any different part of them to make a sound. So I was just sort of getting him to squeeze the bag and blowing air through each of the different pipes and stuff, and also Maori instruments like the puterino and didgeridoos too. I played around with that, not so much making sounds with it as just breathing through it.
We got rice paper that you make spring rolls out of, and we made this big lung out of it that could breathe, and that became some of the breath with liquid and water in it to try and make the alien's breath come to life. A very odd thing to do. You'd
fill it up with water again and start blowing through the straw, and it would start making this new sound. It's like, oh, the holes, it's ripping apart, but now it sounds even better. It's degrading, and so we had this palette of breaths from this rice paper lung.
The moment I like best is the sound that Shell made. It was a mixture of playing some of the tui with some camel recording that we had, gurgling sound that they make, and she made it into quite a raspy sort of a sound, and it's actually my favourite sound of the whole thing is the sound that she made.
I think those are their names.
Abbott and Costello were our two heptapods, and we tried to differentiate between the two, with one being slightly deeper and one being more high-pitched. One of them had more sort of a chuffing, sort of more of these clicky pops than the other one did as well, and one of them had more deep sort of throbbing sort of sounds. So you kind of can visually see that they are different. The sound is very slight, but there are differences between the two.
There was a lot more shaping and moving and polishing and stuff like that went into this particular sound design than anything else I've done. Going back and forth over stuff with Dave and picking and choosing things at work, and it was a lot like painting. You continually smear and blend and wash and dilute it and dissolve it, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
We had some great feedback from Denny, very clear when he didn't like something, very clear when he loved something. This is the perfect alien, which was really cool. It was really nice to get that sort of feedback from him. And you can't help but love those beautiful images that they shot. And you know, it's just an honour to put sounds to something that looks so beautiful. It really, really is. It wasn't your normal alien language film, but you kind of had to construct it as though it were a language coming out of their bodies. And so that was kind of really the trick, is to kind of give it enough signposts and enough shape to make it feel like they are communicating with us in an intelligent manner. It's an alien language, no one knows what it is, so it can be anything you want it to be, as long as the director likes it.
And I'm very proud of the way the alien are talking. In fact, not talking, expressing emotions through sound.